I came to the Duke of Ashcombe's house with my grandmother's writing box under my arm and no invitation in my pocket. And I had decided somewhere on the cold road that I would not stand in his hall pretending to be anyone but the woman who held the only thing his house had ever needed and never paid for. The brass key to the box hung from a faded ribbon at my wrist. I had worn the grey wool I had owned for 6 years, the dress my mother called my penance, because I wanted no one in that house to mistake why I had come. My sister Sophia had been sent ahead 3 days before in primrose silk, with our mother beside her and a hired chaise and every ribbon the family could still afford, to be presented to the Duke as a thing worth marrying. I had been told to stay home. I had been told I would embarrass them. I had let them believe I would obey, and then I had walked the last 4 miles when the carrier set me down, and I had timed my arrival for the hour I knew the drawing room would be full. A footman tried to turn me at the door. I gave him my grandmother's name, not my own, and watched it mean nothing to him, and went past him while he was still deciding. The drawing room at Ashcombe was the length of our whole house at home. My mother saw me first. The colour left her face the way water leaves a tilted glass, all at once and from the bottom. Sophia, mid-curtsy, froze, and in the centre of the room, with his back half to me and a glass of wine untouched in his scarred right hand, the Duke went still. I had heard his voice before I saw his face, low, unhurried, the kind of voice that does not need to be raised because it has never once been ignored. He set the glass down. He turned. He did not look at the primrose silk. He did not look at my mother, who was already gathering breath to explain me away. He crossed the entire room, past the daughter laid out for him like the last good plate in the cupboard, and he stopped in front of the woman in 6-year-old grey, and the whole room watched him do it. "Your name," he said. "Not who are you. Not how dare you. Just your name, as though it were the only fact in England he still required." "Eleanor Hartley," I said. "The elder Miss Hartley. The one you were told not to mind." Something moved behind his dark eyes, not surprise. Recognition, as if I had said a word he had been waiting 2 years to hear, and could not, for the life of him, believe had walked in on its own feet wearing wool. "No," he said quietly. "I rather think you're the only one I came to mind at all." And there it was, the question that would not let the room go. The question I could see catch on every guest's face, and on my mother's, and on Sophia's. Why did the Duke of Ashcombe look at the dismissed eldest daughter as though she were the answer to something, when the beauty had been delivered to his door in silk? My mother recovered first. She always did. She came at me with her smile fixed like a splint, and her voice pitched for the room. "Your Grace, you must forgive my elder girl. She is high-strung. She was not expected. She will of course return home in the morning. She will be given a room," the Duke said, not loudly, and my mother's sentence died in her throat. He had not taken his eyes off me. "Miss Hartley has travelled a long way. My aunt will see her settled." He knew. I understood it in that instant, standing in my penance dress with the key biting my wrist. He knew exactly how long the road had been, and he knew it in a way that had nothing to do with the 4 miles I had walked that afternoon. The Dowager was summoned, Lady Augusta, the Duke's aunt, a small, upright woman of 60, with a face like a closed book and eyes that missed nothing. She looked me over once, head to hem, took in the grey wool and the box clamped under my arm as if it might be taken from me, and something in her seemed to decide in my favour for reasons entirely her own. "Come, child," she said. "You look like a girl who has not eaten since breakfast and has been too proud to say so. Bring your box. No one here will touch it." I held it tighter all the same. She gave me a room with a fire already lit, which meant it had been ordered before I arrived, which meant the Duke had told them to ready a room for the elder Miss Hartley days ago. For the daughter, no one but he had thought would come. I sat on the edge of the bed and did not cry. Because I had not let myself cry since I was 21, and a man named Selby had returned my letters by carrier the same week the family income disappeared, and the world quietly agreed I was no longer worth the trouble of marrying. That was the year I learned what I was worth to people who had wanted me, exactly as much as my father's purse, and not a shilling more. Lady Augusta watched me from the door. "You came here to do something," she said. "Not to be looked at. I have sat in that drawing room 40 years watching girls be looked at. You are the first in some time who came to do." "I came," I said, "to settle an account my family does not even know is owed." She did not ask which account. She only said, "Then eat first. Accounts keep, strength does not," and left me with the box and the fire and the key. I did not sleep. I sat with the writing box open on my knees and looked at what was inside it, as I had looked 100 times since the night I found it, the winter my father died, and I went through his papers because no one else in the house could bear to. Beneath the false floor my grandmother had built into her own lap desk, Honoria Hartley, who had been born to this very family, the Ashcombs, and married down into the Hartleys for love in 1788, lay a settlement deed. A marriage settlement. And in it, in a clerk's careful hand and under the old Duke's seal, the promise that the estate of Ashcombe would pay to Honoria and to the heirs of her body after her the sum of £600 in every year of their lives. £600 a year. My grandmother had received it until she died in 1805, and then it had simply stopped, and our family, who had been comfortable, had become poor, and no one had ever told us why, and my father had gone to his grave believing he had failed us through some weakness of his own. He had not failed us. Someone in this house had been keeping what was ours. I had come to find out who. I had assumed, on the long road, that it was the Duke. The next evening proved how wrong a clever woman can be when her wound does the thinking for her. There was a dinner. My mother had no power to send me from it, now that the Duke had housed me, and so she did the next cruelest thing, which was to seat me far down the table, below the salt, beside a deaf clergyman, and to direct every soft word and every laugh up toward the Duke and Sophia, as though I were a stain the candlelight might be kind enough to hide. Sophia would not meet my eye. She is not unkind, my sister. She is 19, and she has been told her whole life that her face is the family's only asset, and she believed me a danger to the one task she had been raised to perform. It was at that dinner I first saw the man who had taken everything. He sat at the Duke's right hand, a spare, grey, courteous man of perhaps 50, with quick eyes and a habit of laughing exactly half a second after the Duke did. Mr. Gideon Vane, I heard him called, the Duke's man of business, the steward of all Ashcombe's affairs, these 20 years and more. He had served the old Duke and the brother who died, and now Julian. He carried the estate's ledgers in his head, they said, better than any book. I should have felt nothing at the name. I felt the hair rise on my arms instead, the way an animal knows a thing before its mind has caught up. He looked at me once, down the long table, one flick of those quick eyes to the grey dress, to the woman the family was burying below the salt, and he did not look away fast enough, and I saw him take my measure as a man takes the measure of a debt he had thought long dead, and finds to his horror standing up and breathing. I did not understand it yet, but I marked it. The Duke, I will say, did not let me stay buried. Halfway through the second course, he addressed me down the whole length of the table, in front of everyone, in that low voice that did not need to be raised. "Miss Hartley, they tell me you keep your family's books." The table went quiet in the particular way a table does when it senses someone is about to be either humiliated or interesting. "I do, Your Grace," I said. "Someone has to." Numbers do not flatter, and they do not forget. I find them better company than most rooms. And what do your numbers tell you, he said, about a family that was comfortable in your grandmother's day and is not now? My mother's fork stopped against her plate. I looked at him, at the scar on the hand resting beside his glass, at the dark, unflinching eyes that everyone else in the room was working so hard to please. And the wound did my thinking for me. I thought, he knows. He has always known. He has been spending what is mine, and now he is toying with me at his own table. They tell me, I said, slow and clear enough for the salt to hear it and the head of the table both, that money does not vanish, it only changes pockets. And that the man who knows whose pocket it changed into is rarely the man who suffers for the loss. I had meant it as a blade thrown blind. I watched it land, not on the Duke. On the courteous grey man at his right hand, who set down his wine with a steadiness so deliberate it was its own kind of flinch. Vain? But the Duke heard it as aimed at himself, and for one moment the whole careful surface of him cracked, and what showed through was not anger. It was something far worse for my purposes, because it was hard to hate. It was a man who had been accused of exactly the thing he was trying to undo, and who could not yet say so. No, he said, very quietly. He is not. You are right about that, Miss Hartley. He never is. After that I could not pretend I had not seen the man under the title. Neither, I think, could he. He found me the next morning, in the long gallery, where I had gone to be alone with the rain on the windows. He came without his man, without his aunt, without the careful audience a duke is never supposed to shed, and that alone told me he had come to say something he could not say in front of anyone. You think I robbed you, he said. No greeting. He had his brother's way of going straight at a thing I would learn, though he had hated his brother. You came into my house believing the Duke of Ashcombe has been living on your family's blood. Say it. I would rather be accused to my face than flattered to it. I have had 34 years of the second kind. So I said it. Standing in his gallery in my grey dress, with the key at my wrist, I told him about the settlement. The £600, my grandmother dead in 1805, and the money dead with her. My father going grey and silent, and into an early grave believing himself a failure. The suitor who had returned my letters by carrier the week we became poor. I told him I had walked 4 miles to stand in his drawing room, because I would be damned before I let my sister be sold to the very house that had beggared us, and I had brought the proof in a box because I meant to put it on a table in front of witnesses where no duke could make it quietly disappear. He did not interrupt. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment, and then he said the thing that took the floor out from under everything I had built my anger on. I know about the £600, he said. I have known for 2 years. I have been looking for you for 2 years. I said nothing. I could not. My brother died in 14 and I came into all of it, the estate, the books, debts I did not make, and a name I never expected to carry. I was a soldier, Miss Hartley. Second sons are. I never thought to inherit, and I never wanted to. And when I read the books I found a line that had been paid faithfully for 17 years, and then stopped. In 1805, the year a woman named Honoria Hartley died. A Hartley who had been born an Ashcombe, my own grandfather's sister. 600 a year, owed to her heirs. Owed by the plain words of the deed, still, and I could not find where it had gone, or who her heirs were, or why a family of my own blood had been let fall into want not 4 counties away while my house drew the income that should have kept them. You invited us, I said. My voice did not sound like mine. Sophia, the silk. My mother thinks. Your mother thinks I want a bride, he said. I let her think it, because I did not know which Hartley held the proof, or whether any of you knew the wrong that had been done. I invited the family to find the heir. I did not expect the heir to walk in alone in a 6-year-old dress and accuse me to my own table. Something almost broke in his face, the ghost of what might have been a smile in another man, in a better year. I did not expect her to be the only person in that room I have wanted to keep looking at since. The rain came hard against the glass. We were standing too close. I knew it, and did not move, and neither did he, and the air in that long gallery went thin and bright the way it does before lightning. And his scarred hand lifted, not to touch me, only toward me. As if the wanting had got ahead of the man, and the gallery door opened at the far end, and Mr. Vane's courteous voice said, "Your Grace, forgive me. The magistrate has come about the north drains." And the lightning did not come. And the Duke stepped back, and I breathed for what felt like the first time in a minute. But I had seen Vane's eyes go to the writing box under my arm before he ever looked at his master. And I understood, at last and all at once, the thing my anger had hidden from me. The Duke had not stopped my grandmother's money. The Duke had been hunting the man who did. And the man who did had served this house for 20 years, carried its ledgers in his head, and had just watched the proof of his crime walk into the one place he could not keep it out of. I knew it was Vane, the way you know a face in a crowd before you can name it. And I knew, by the careful way he had looked at my box, that he had just understood I knew. He did not wait long to move. That afternoon a maid I did not recognize was found in my room, turning down the bed 3 hours before any bed in that house was turned down. Nothing was taken. The box was on my person, the key at my wrist, as it had been since I arrived. But that evening Mr. Vane himself sought me out with a face full of grave concern, and an offer dressed as a kindness. "Miss Hartley," he said low, so the corridor would not hear, "I understand you carry an old family paper, a settlement. Forgive me, it is my office to say it, such documents, when they are very old, are so easily challenged. A faded seal, a clerk long dead who cannot swear to his own hand. I have seen good families ruined chasing a claim that could not be proved, and seen the women at the heart of it called fortune hunters in every drawing room in the county. Give it to me. Let me have it examined quietly, properly, by men who can authenticate it beyond any doubt. I would not see you hurt. I would not see you hurt." From the man who had let my father go grey and into the ground. "How kind," I said, and smiled, and held the box where he could see my hand had not the smallest intention of opening it. But my grandmother built this box herself, Mr. Vane, and I find I trust her carpentry over any man's examination. The paper stays where she put it. Until I put it on a table myself, his courtesy did not slip. That was the frightening thing about Gideon Vane. It never slipped, but he looked at me for a moment, with the flat assessing patience of a man recalculating a sum, and I knew I had just told him, plainly, that I could not be bought, and could not be frightened, and would not hand him the rope. Which meant he would have to find another. It came to its head 4 days later, and it came because I forced it. I would not let it fester into rumour in corridors. If my grandmother's £600 was to be reckoned, it would be reckoned in the open, with witnesses, the way I had promised myself on the road. My mother had arranged a gathering, neighbours, the county, every family she still hoped might be impressed by Sophia's nearness to a duke. A full drawing room, exactly the room I needed. I came down in the grey dress again. My mother caught my arm at the foot of the stairs, and for once there was no performance in her face, only fear, naked and old. "Eleanor, whatever you are about to do, think of your sister. Think of all of us. If you make a scene, if you are wrong, we are finished. There is nothing left to fall back on. Nothing. Do you understand what nothing is?" I do. I have lain awake inside it for 11 years. And I understood her then, my mother, who had spent a decade trying to sell one daughter because she did not know there had ever been anything to sell but daughters. Her cruelty had a price tag on it, and the price was simple terror. I know exactly what nothing is, Mama, I said, gently, because she had taught me. I have kept the books inside it. That is why I am about to end it. I went into the drawing room, and I did the thing I had walked 4 miles to do. In front of the county, while my mother whitened and Sophia's hand crept to her mouth, I asked the Duke of Ashcombe, clearly, so the whole room turned, whether his house honored its debts. He looked at me. He understood. And he did not rescue me from it. He let me hold the floor, which I have since come to understand is the greatest gift a man of his rank had it in him to give a woman of mine. He did not take the moment and make it his. It does, he said. Name the debt, Miss Hartley. I set my grandmother's writing box on the table in the center of the room. I turned the key at my wrist in the lock, and I had my hand on the false floor when Gideon Vane spoke from the doorway and made his second move, and very nearly won. Your Grace, before this poor girl shames herself and her family both. His voice carried, full of sorrow, pitched for every ear. I had hoped to spare her this. The settlement she means to show you is a forgery. I have here, and he produced, from his own coat, a paper, aged and sealed and convincing, a deed of release, signed by Honoria Hartley herself in 1805, surrendering all claim to the annuity in exchange for a final payment, fairly made. The matter was closed 11 years ago. What this young woman carries is a copy made since, doctored to reopen a settled account and entrap a duke into a marriage her beauty could not secure. I have grieved to watch it. I grieve to say it now. The room turned on me like a single animal. I saw it happen. I saw the word fortune hunter form on a dozen faces, the same word that had ridden out to me by carrier when I was 21. I saw the Duke's jaw set white, not in doubt of me, I would understand that later, but in a fury he could not yet aim, because Vane had built it so cleverly that to defend me was to seem the entrapped fool, and to doubt me was to break the one thing in 2 years he had let himself want. And then I opened my box, and found the false floor empty. The settlement deed, my grandmother's original, under the old Duke's seal, was gone. Ash and a curl of burnt corner where it had lain. The maid who had not been turning down the bed. He had had it 4 days, and burned it, and waited for me to walk into the center of the room and reach for nothing. That was the cost. I want you to feel it the way I felt it, standing over an empty box in a borrowed room in a 6-year-old dress, with the county deciding I was a liar and a fortune hunter, and my mother's terror coming true in real time, and the one man I had let myself want made to look a dupe for ever having looked at me. Vane had not needed to destroy me. He had only needed to make the proof disappear and let my own family's poverty and my own old shame do the rest. I had chosen, in front of everyone, to stake everything on a paper, and the paper was ash. I did the hardest thing I have ever done. I looked at the Duke, and I said, "Lo, only for him. Let me go." Now? Tonight, quietly. If I leave, they will say I was a desperate girl and a liar, and you will be the man who saw through her. If I stay, you will be the Duke who was nearly snared. I will not pay for my grandmother's £600 with your name. Let me go. For a moment, the certainty went out of him entirely. I watched a man who had commanded soldiers stand in his own drawing room and not know what to do. And it was the most human I had ever seen him, and it nearly unmade me. Then I thought of my grandmother, Honoria Hartley, who had built a false floor into her writing box because she had been born into this family and married out of it, and known, perhaps better than anyone, exactly what such houses do to inconvenient claims. A woman careful enough to hide a deed under a floor of her own making. And I thought, a woman that careful does not make only one of a thing. I did not let myself smile. I let myself remember. Before I go, I said, and now I raised my voice so the room had it, every word, Mr. Vane will perhaps explain something, since he knows the matter so well. A marriage settlement in the year 1788 was always executed in two parts. Counterparts, one held by each side, each signed by both, each as good in law as the other. The bride's family kept one. The estate kept one. I turned to Vane, and I felt the floor of the room tilt back toward me by a single degree. Where, Mr. Vane, in all the ledgers you carry so faithfully in your head, is the Ashcombe counterpart of my grandmother's settlement? The estate's own copy? You knew the deed by name. You knew to burn mine. Show us yours. The courtesy slipped then, for the first time. It slipped, and while he searches for it, I said, let me give the room something his fire could not reach. I took from inside my dress, sewn flat against the lining where no maid's hand had found it, a thin packet of papers, soft with age and handling. My grandmother's receipts. Every year, 1788 to 1805, the annuity paid, signed for by her, countersigned by the estate's man of business. The same office Mr. Sir Vane has held these 20 years. The same hand, gentlemen, that wrote paid in full on every receipt until 1805, and then wrote nothing, ever again, while £600 a year went on leaving this estate's books all the same. I laid them on the table, one by one, beside the empty box. Compare the hand to the man's, compare it to his deed of release, and then ask him why an account he says was closed in 1805 has been paid out of Ashcombe every year since. To whom, Mr. Vane? £600 a year, for 11 years, paid to whom? The Duke crossed to the table. He picked up the receipts, and then Vane's forged release, and laid them side by side, and I watched the soldier in him read two hands, and find them the same. And I watched him understand, all at once, the thing I had only suspected, that his own books would show the annuity still flowing, every year, into a pocket that was not ours and never had been the estate's at all. These are paid, the Duke said, and his voice had gone very quiet, which I had learned was the most dangerous thing it did. Every year since 1805, I have read these books, Vane. I read them at midnight for 2 years, looking for an honest answer. The line is there. I took it for an old error no one had troubled to close. He looked up. It is your hand. It is your hand on her receipts, and your hand on this release. It is your hand on every payment since, drawn and signed and pocketed by the only man who ever saw the books. Gideon Vane did not run, I will give him that. He stood in the doorway with 20 years of courtesy draining out of his grey face and said the only true thing I ever heard him say, which was nothing at all. The Duke turned to me, and here is the part the room had been waiting the whole hour for, the part I have replayed in my own mind more times than I will admit. He did not thank me. He did not apologize for his house, though he opened his mouth to. I stopped him. Your Grace, I said, stop. I am not the one your house wronged. My grandmother was, and she is 11 years past your sorrow, and so is my father. Do not say you are sorry. Say what you mean to do. Something lit in him that I had not seen in any room we had stood in together. Not the wanting, though that was there too, but a kind of relief, as if he had spent his whole titled life waiting for one person to ask him for the deed, instead of the apology. What I mean to do, he said, loud enough for the county, and my whitening mother, and my open-mouthed sister, and the ruin of Gideon Vane in the doorway, is pay the debt my house has owed your family for 11 years, to the last shilling, with the law to witness it. And then, Eleanor Hartley, when there is not a soul left in England who can call you anything but what you are, I mean to ask you, with no debt between us, and nothing to be gained by either side, whether you would do me the honor of staying, not your sister, not the silk. You, the woman who walked 4 miles in an old dress to put the truth on a table in front of me. You may ask, I said, and my voice was not steady at all, when the debt is paid, not 1 hour before. He paid it within the month, before lawyers, with Vane's own ledgers as the proof against him. And then, on a grey afternoon in the long gallery with the rain on the windows, where he had first told me he had been looking for me for 2 years, he asked. And I, who had learned at 21 to want nothing and ask for nothing, and brace always for the moment the wanting was withdrawn, found that I had walked the whole long road to this man precisely so that I could, for once in my life, say yes to something, and believe it would not be taken back. He kissed me, as though he had been holding his breath since the drawing room. The release of it, I felt it in my own chest. The giving way of a wall I had built so long ago, I had forgotten it was a thing I had made, and not simply the shape of the world. Gideon Vane was tried for embezzlement and transported for the term of his natural life. The 6,600 he had taken across 11 years was recovered from the property he had bought with it, and every shilling of my grandmother's annuity, past and present, was paid into the Hartley name where it had always belonged. My mother, who had spent 11 years trying to sell a daughter to escape a poverty she never understood the cause of, wept when she learned it, and then, being my mother, recovered, and began at once to tell the county she had always known the elder girl had something in her. Sophia married 2 years later, for no reason but that she liked the man, which is a freedom my grandmother's £600 bought her, and which I count among the better things that came of the whole affair. I keep the writing box still. The false floor is empty now. There is no longer anything in this family that needs hiding under a floor. But the box sits on the table in the morning room at Ashcombe, where the light is best, and it holds Julian's letters, the ones he wrote me in the month between the debt and the asking, when he was being so very careful not to assume. The little brass key still hangs on its faded ribbon, though I no longer wear it at my wrist. I do not need to. There is nothing left in my life I am afraid will be taken if I set it down. By the spring of the following year, I stood at the window of that same morning room, a duchess now, addressed correctly by people who had once watched me seated below the salt, and I watched Julian come up from the stables across the wet grass with that scar on his hand and that low voice already saying something to make me turn. And I thought of the woman in the grey wool dress on the cold road with the box under her arm, walking the last 4 miles alone because she had decided not to be left behind. They told her to stay home. They said she would embarrass them. She went anyway. And every plan they had made for her sister and against her came undone on the day she set her grandmother's box upon a table and turned the key.